apologies for absence. So it falls on me now to welcome everyone here, thank everyone who's here for coming, and to say that we will be continuing today with the main substantive item.
Chairman,
yes.
The Permanent Secretary from the Office of the Prime Minister Portfolio Ministry, where is she?
We haven't had any apology for her, so I assume she's on her way. Is that not the case?
She said she was on her way.
She said she was on her way.
Just out of, isn't the protocol to have the accounting officer here in these matters first before we proceed? I seek guidance from the AG who...
I think that is normally the case. On the other hand, I don't think that we could necessarily delay the entire meeting and everybody here because somebody as senior as the permanent secretary, who is the accounting officer, is running a bit late. So in terms of opening remarks, I was just saying that we'll be continuing our discussion arising out of the Auditor General's special audit on PCJ and PetroJam. And we don't have any minutes from the last meeting yet. Our very able clerk is somewhat under the weather, and we thank her for being here, in fact, in light of her not feeling 100%. So in the absence of the minutes, which we'll have to take on the next occasion, we would move to item 5, which is the continuation of the discussions we were having. And Member One, you had indicated to me that you wanted to make some preliminary remarks.
Yes, I'd made preliminary remarks and then I have substantive questions. But just in terms of administratively, we are proceeding very slowly in terms of getting through the entire report. In fact, so far we're really on about 2 or 3 paragraphs of 1 page of the report. And it is, I'm not suggesting we should rush it, because I think it is important to carefully delve into the points that the AG raised. And as we're seeing, what she has raised is really the tip of the iceberg in many cases, or certainly in some cases. But we need to work our way through this report because there are many icebergs there, I would imagine. And at the pace we're going with the rate of our sittings, it's going to take months to get through it. So I really wanted to see, Mr. Chairman, if we couldn't set more frequent sittings. If we could sit, for example, on a Tuesday and a Wednesday morning for a few weeks, or whenever I know we have, we're in a budget, we're coming immediately into the budget, but so that we can plan in advance whether the House staff, the clerk, and the clerk to Parliament could arrange for us to sit more frequently in the period immediately after the budget. That was one. The second administrative type issue, Mr. Chairman, and this is particularly in light of the ministry paper that was tabled by the Prime Minister in Parliament yesterday, giving us more information on the settlement with the former HR manager. The question I'd really like to ask is, are there any sanctions for public servants who come before the committee and mislead us, give wrong information, give incorrect information, whether deliberately or negligently. And, you know, many of us, I'm sure, watch the proceedings, for example, in the U.S. Congress, and we see there it is actually a criminal offense to lie to committees. And I just wanted to know what were the sanctions for public officers who come before committees and mislead the committees. I don't know if Member Jackson, you said you had, or if you are chairman or the AG.
I wouldn't attempt to answer that off the cuff. I think it's an important issue, and I know just from the remarks made beside you that there's a view as to what the legal position is. I think it's sufficiently important that I would ask if we could have the counsel to Parliament to advise us on that. Perhaps you could do a memo to us on the issue as to what the legal sanctions are, if any, for deliberately or negligently misleading the Public Accounts Committee in giving, for want of a better word, testimony before us on any matter.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
With your
Yes,
permission
Member.
on that matter. Further to Member Bunting's inquiry, I can say it is so, because I remember at one of the PAAC meeting, I had cause to remind the General Manager and others that it was punishable under law not to tell the truth before the committee. So the Legislative Council, who in fact guided me on the legislative provision for that. So we could just ask her to step in and so provide that guidance that you saw. But the answer to Member Golding's inquiry is that yes, it is an offense punishable by fine and imprisonment to lie before the committee.
Well, I'm glad this matter has come up recently and an answer was already provided. If the Legislative Council is available and could provide an answer extemporaneously during the course of the sitting, that would be great. If not, I would ask that she provide us with a memo on the issue so we can at least have it recorded for
Chairman,
posterity. Yes, Dr. Guy.
in light of the comments from Member Bunting and Member Jackson, I am also seeking some clarification on housekeeping matters. In the Parliament, does any particular paper tabled accord greater importance than another? Meaning that my questions basically is, what is provided to a committee? Is there any or ought to be any difference as to what is provided to the Parliament in terms of the said information? Does one take a greater precedence in terms of priority importance? Which one do we believe? That's the question I'm asking.
If they're inconsistent information being provided to a committee as opposed to what is tabled in Parliament itself? I see. Well, perhaps her memo could address that issue as well.
And if you'll allow me, Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
And I want to thank the Permanent Secretary for arriving. Ministry Paper 1029 was tabled yesterday by the Prime Minister. And
Dr. Guy, before we jump into that.
No, Chairman. No. It is relevant because we need to know what we are dealing with and which particular document we need to be referring to.
But perhaps I know it's relevant, and I'm just saying perhaps before we get into that, we could just address the other preliminary issue which Member Bunting raised, which was to do with how frequently we can sit. Frequently we can sit. We're now competing with the military band. Not a competition that is probably well advised, but necessary nonetheless. Yeah.
And I must commend those on there who are trying to frustrate this committee sitting on their creativity.
Yes, the timing of the preparation for tomorrow.
But also to say my preliminary questions gave notice of substantive questions to do with ministry paper that was tabled yesterday.
Yes, on the issue of how frequently we can sit, we have had a challenge in scheduling meetings because of the fact that there is one chamber and there are many committees that compete for time. But my understanding is that by convention, if not more than convention, the Public Accounts Committee is given priority in scheduling, and that the Tuesday morning slot is really for it. So another committee would only have access to that slot if the PAC wasn't using it. And I would like to reinstitute that going forward. In terms of additional days, we could look at the availability of sitting on Wednesdays as well. I'm not sure if we'd be intruding on any other priorities if we were to do so. The PAAC, yeah. Yeah.
If at least we could secure the Tuesday morning every week,
yes,
then we could at least move at a reasonable pace. But
right. We
will now take a break for at least 2 weeks.
At least, yeah.
So, in total, 3 months after the Auditor General has delivered a report, we'll have had maybe 2 or 3 sittings.
Well, yes, this is the third. The first one, we haven't even got minutes
exactly.
for. Yeah. Right. So, but I think the clerk is on board with that idea of having the Tuesdays allocated to us going forward. So, those preliminary issues having been dealt with, we can continue with the substantive item, which is the Auditor General's report on PCJ and Petrojam. As has already been mentioned, a ministry paper number 10 was tabled in Parliament yesterday by the Prime Minister, attaching the settlement agreement in full, the HR manager's employment contract, the calculation of the compensation paid for her arising from her termination, a summary of the disciplinary issues that were before a disciplinary tribunal and were unresolved at the time of the settlement being arrived at, a very terse economic cost calculation which was put forward as a justification for paying her that settlement and settling with her, and I think a policy document related to HR issues, and there may have been others. Member Guy, I had asked you to defer until we'd address those preliminary matters. Now that we have, I know Member Bunting also had said he had some substantive issues he wished to raise. So yes, and Member Daly. So in terms of sequencing, how do you want to proceed?
Chairman,
yes.
Member Bunting has agreed to allow me to go forward.
The clerk has also pointed out that a letter dated the 5th of February, but apparently received by Mrs. Cook, the clerk, to the House of Parliament on the 7th, and date stamped by the committee division on the 12th of February. And this is a letter from the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister to Mrs. Cook, on the issues relating to the former, questions relating to the former human resources manager at Petrojam Limited. That was circulated by the clerk, and so we should perhaps just note that it has been formally tabled here. It says, it refers to the questions posed by the Public Accounts Committee at its last sitting, the 29th of January. Now that is actually not the last sitting. No, it's the one before the last sitting, because the last sitting was last week, Tuesday, which was in February. And it says, this correspondence serves to formally inform the Honourable House that having advised by the Solicitor General that answering specific questions in relation to the terms on which the former Human Resources Manager separated from Petrojam Limited and related matters would lead to an actionable breach of confidence. Would lead to an actionable breach of confidence. That's what this letter says that the Permanent Secretary is saying was the advice she had received. Of course, it's somewhat, we're like in Alice in Wonderland now, where we're seeing this letter having yesterday received, tabled in Parliament, Ministry Paper number 10, which laid bare all of the documents and ancillary materials, the detailed financial calculations, etc., around this supposedly confidential matter.
Attempted confidential.
Yeah. So this is where we are now. But anyway, it has been superseded by events. So, Dr. Guy.
Chairman, my question is somewhat related to housekeeping matters, because we need to be coming from a position where we're all on the same page. Ministry Paper 10 yesterday indicated, as part of the bundle, the contract for employment for the former HR manager at Petrojam, dated the 30th of January 2017, and it outlined, Chairman, the terms of employment of the HR manager in a fulsome way. It's dated the 30th of January 2017. However, there's another document that was tabled in this very Parliament at the PAAC, dated the 30th of January 2017, addressed to the same individual and termed her contract of employment the letter of offer. And there are two striking differences there, Chairman. One is that this letter of January 20th, 2017, tabled at the PAAC, indicated during that particular period what the compensation package was. Of basic 658, transport and subsistence 111, duty allowance of 57, total monthly compensation of 770,136. And if you flip over leave, you see where the total monthly compensation is 824,119, annualized 10.583. This was a document that was tabled at the Public Admin and Appropriations Committee. Signed.
Remind me, the date of that is what?
30th of January 2017.
And we have another document of
we
the
have
same
another
date.
document, the 30th of January 2017, which was tabled yesterday, which purports to be the same letter of employment, offer of employment to the said individual, with different numbers.
What?
Yes.
Your monthly compensation package will comprise of the following: basic or pensionable salary of 842,716 compared to 656,333 in the document table at the PAAC. Transportation and subsistence are the same, duty allowance the same, total monthly compensation 1.081, annualized to 12.977. And this one that was given to the parliamentary committee before had an annualized of the same date of offer of 10.58. Hence my asking the question before, which of the document are we really to deal with? We heard in the parliament that the officer was employed initially at a certain salary, and 3 months later the salary was increased, a month and a half, whenever, was increased to a certain amount. Now, this document tabled by the Prime Minister on the 30th of January, yesterday, dated the 30th of January, suggests that we have some PhD working at Petrojam who are good at spin. Because this particular document, Chairman, seemed to have been doctored and presented to the Parliament. In addition, this document speaks to the probation. The document of tabled yesterday speaks to a probation, and it says, based on the General Manager's request, your probationary period has been waived. However, the document table at the PAAC said, you are required to undergo an extensive orientation period, approximately 1 month. Consequently, your probation period shall be for 4 months, beginning on the effective date of your employment, and the date of employment is the 14th of February, as we have gleaned from other portions of this. Now, Chairman, I am not lost. I'm flabbergasted. I am disoriented. I do not know where and who to believe now.
Well, my response would be, oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. And it's an appropriate point at which I should just brief the committee on the legal information that have been provided to me by the Council to Parliament. The Senate and House of Representatives Powers and Privileges Act provides in section 16, for which the marginal note is false evidence. Any question? Sorry, let me begin again. Any person who before either House or any committee or any joint committee intentionally gives a false answer to any question material to the subject of inquiry, which may be put to him during the course of any examination, shall be guilty of an offense. A, if such answer was given on oath against Section 5 of the Perjury Act, or B, if such answer was given otherwise than on oath against Section 8 of the Perjury Act, and shall be liable on conviction to the penalties prescribed by the appropriate section for that offense. Under the Perjury Act, Section 5, it says, a person who, being required or authorized by law to make any statement on oath for any purpose, and being lawfully sworn, otherwise than in a judicial proceeding, willfully makes a statement which is material for that purpose and which he knows to be false or does not believe to be true, or willfully uses any false affidavit for the purpose of the Bill of Sale Act, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and on conviction, on indictment thereof, liable to imprisonment with hard labor for any term not exceeding 7 years, or to a fine, or to both such fine and imprisonment. And Section 8 says, every person who knowingly and willfully makes otherwise than on oath a statement false in a material particular, and the statement is made A, in a voluntary declaration, or B, in an abstract, account, balance sheet, book, certificate, declaration, entry, estimate, inventory, notice, report, return, or other document which he is authorized or required to make attest or verify by any enactment for the time being in force, or C, in any oral declaration or oral answer which is required to make by, under, or in pursuance of any enactment for the time being in force, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and liable on conviction on indictment thereof to imprisonment with hard labor for any term not exceeding 2 years, or to a fine, or to both such fine and imprisonment. In this instance, this information has not been provided to us on oath. It has been provided to us nevertheless. It is governed by those two statutes, the Senate and House of Representatives Powers and Privileges Act and Section 8 of the Perjury Act.
And if I may continue, Chairman.
Yes.
I need some questions on the oath. No, I'm serious.
It is indeed unfortunate that two conflicting documents, both dated the same date, have been tabled. The Auditor General has pointed out that if one looks at section 72 of her report, the matter is addressed there.
No, clarification for me. You mentioned about the testimony being given on the oath and not on the oath. If it's not on the oath, what is the penalty? Just for clarification. 2 years.
2 years, or a fine, or both a fine. Up to 2 years.
And if it's on the oath, it's 7 years.
Correct.
So we'll be guided by which? On the oath or not on the oath?
In this instance, we're not taking...
No, I'm just asking.
Not on the oath.
Okay.
We met in camera last week and then give us wrong information in camera.
So perhaps we need to swear people now to raise the stakes even
Chairman,
higher.
I see where the AG made reference to that, but the amended letter, would it be the letter of the same date? And secondly, Chairman, in terms of the discrepancy, while I wait that answer, the second document, the one tabled yesterday, further indicated, and I'll read under the same heading of probation, in light of your probationary period being waived, you'll be placed on permanent staff of the company with effect from February 13th, 2017. The very day that the employee started the job, she was made a permanent employee of the company. Yes, that is so, Chairman, and that is egregious. But there's a question I'd like to ask of Petrojam. Can I ask, Chairman, and I think Mr. Watson, our permanent secretary, could answer. Is it a fact or is it not a fact that the final salary for the recently terminated HR manager was $16 million total?
Can you put it another way?
Was she paid a salary, the final salary, a final per annum salary? Was the salary jacked up from $12.9 million to $16 million?
Chairman, please.
You want to...
Yes, same thing.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you very much. Morning, members. Morning. For clarity, can you tell, same question, and I'm not going to speak of jacking up a salary. Could you tell this Parliament what was the final salary used to compute the HR manager's separation? What was the salary used when you made the calculation after you planned to pay her out?
So,
Mr. Chairman, which of the question that we're taking? We're taking member Fitzjackson or we're taking member Daly? Which one?
I want mine answered.
Right, so
and
so
Mr. Daly wants his answer.
So allow the gentleman question to be answered, man. Come on, man.
please, with respect. They relate to the same issue, and I'd ask that they be answered in sequence. The first question was the gross salary of the employee, which started under one letter dated January the 30th at just over 10 million. In another letter, also dated January the 30th, 2017, was revised, and this is the one that was tabled yesterday in the House, to 12.977 million. The first question is, was that subsequently increased materially to a figure which you've indicated was in the range of 16 million? So if you could please answer that.
Yeah, I don't. Chairman, there were two letters apparently that was issued to the HR manager. So the first letter is the one Member Guy just read, and then at a salary of 10 million, I think you said, and then subsequently to that, and that included things like the probationary period. And then subsequent to that, now another letter, the letter was changed to the new amount, which is what was tabled yesterday. So this letter is the final letter that the HR manager and Petrojam was using. So there were that's I don't think answering his question. His question is subsequent to this second letter that's dated the same day. You're indicating that's the second letter that was had the same date. Was there a subsequent increase of her gross pay? So right. So this So the letter that was tabled yesterday is the final letter. But you'll recall that last year a salary increase was granted. So that would not be in this. This is her offer letter, but then she would have had a salary increase based on the government's. What was that salary increase? The total was 9.5. It's over 3 years, so it's 954. It's over what? 3 years. So it's the first year was 9%, then 5% in the second year, and the final year would have been 4%. 4%. So having been employed with effect from February 2017, in 2018 she received a 9% increase. Right, that's correct. We don't have the details of what that was. I didn't bring that, but I can. Did that only affect her basic pay, or did it affect any other elements? Yes, it would affect the basic. That would affect the basic.
Would it affect any other allowance, perks?
No allowance was given by the government.
So then it probably is not inconceivable to think then that the figure that I trumped out of the air of $16 million is incorrect.
I would have to check, but I know there was an increase. There was an increase on this amount based on the government's. Could you please provide us with the correct detail on that? Yes. As quickly as possible. Member Wilmington.
I was just going to say to Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson, instead of giving us figures here that might be incorrect, is just sorry. What I'm saying, instead of quoting from your head, from your memory, and giving figures that might not be correct, it's best you advise the committee that you will supply that information that's what I'm saying. So don't give a figure and then get yourself.
No, I don't have a figure. Right. The figure I have is the letter that was submitted yesterday.
Right. Your answer is I'll investigate, and if there's a difference, I'll supply you the answer if it's different. That's all you have to do.
I've asked him to do
don't
that.
get yourself box in the corner.
Okay. Thank you, Member Wilmington. I've asked him to do that, and he's indicated he will do so. Members, there's the issue that Member Daly asked, which relates to that, which was what figure was used, what salary figure was used for the basis of the calculation of our settlement amount. But however, before you respond to that, I have been asked to, the clerk is asking that we indulge her and her team for the JDF rehearsal outside the chamber for half a minute between 10:50 and 11. If it's a half a minute, I don't know why we have to indulge it for 10 minutes. But it's a bit like the math that we're getting in here. It's very, very expansive. So she's asking that we suspend the sitting. Is she ready now? Yes, so I would ask that we suspend the sitting to allow them to come do their fanfare rehearsal. So members, would somebody move? Yes, seconded by Member Bunting and Jackson.
If you do an update, you make a percent.
Wait, hold on. Colin, hey, what go on? You know, say, I'm on my way to go look about the farm work program. Aye, I love to do the farm work program there, you know. But remember, I serve a 5-year prison sentence for a minor crime. Them can't clear it, you know.
Yes, Colin can get his record expunged. Expungement is having a conviction removed from your criminal record after certain specifications have been met. Visit the Criminal and Civil Justice Division in the Ministry of Justice for more information.
Jamaica, give blood for it. Give blood and give the gift of life. So safe you don't have to think twice. Do what you can for one another. Yeah, man. Be a hero, be a blood donor. Yeah, yeah, me people, watch it. Give blood for your sister and your brother. Save the life of another. You might never know. Give blood. Cause you know my life you love. Many people want blood. The Father says so. One blood. Sign up today. Be a blood donor. Many people, one blood.
For little people, it's a really big world. A big world to discover and explore. And because discoveries aren't always easy to understand, little people need help to make sense of the big world. So help them make sense of the world. When you see PG, do PG. The Broadcasting Commission, your partner for a new day.
Keep we island clean. So clean. From the streets to the beach. So clean. No dirty up Jamaica. Please don't do it.
No dash no paper, no dash no plastic. Dispose your garbage responsibly.